In today's video, I'm going to paint some Galloway cattle using acrylic, but I'm going to leave one of the cattle almost completely unpainted. So I'm going to paint an orange cow and a white cow, and both of these are Galloway cattle from the Two Mills herd in the UK. So thank you very much, Jeremy, for letting me use your reference photos. I'll put a link to his Instagram on the screen, so go and check out his Instagram because he's got lots of wonderful pictures of these animals here. And you can see that I'm beginning here on the left by obliterating the beginnings of a third animal, which you saw in the reference photo, but I didn't like the way I'd indicated that with the marker. So I thought, well, I'll just stick with two. So I'm putting in some background color using titanium white and cadmium yellow. These are the interactive acrylics, and I'm putting that paint down with a flat synthetic brush onto A2 mixed media paper. As usual, all the materials are listed in the description of the video, and the initial drawing that you can see here, I've done that freehand using a burnt umber watercolor marker pen. So this week's painting was partly inspired by last week's video. So last week's video was a crowd scene painted in a minimal style. So I'm actually using similar colors that I had left over on my palette, at least in the initial stages. And I thought, well, maybe I can use leaving areas unpainted in the same way I did for the crowd scene, but for just a key part of this painting, and we'll see what effects we get. So if you paint a lot with watercolor in the traditional way, then one of the key techniques to obtain the brightest white is to simply leave part of the paper unpainted. But I think that's less commonly done with acrylic. I think generally speaking, we tend to, as artists, apply acrylic in a way which is more similar to oil paint, where you don't leave any of the paper or canvas uncoated. But to my mind, there's no reason that you can't do that. I don't see why you can't use the watercolor technique of leaving some unpainted paper for it, but just use that same technique for acrylic. So I'm actually taking a little bit of an abstracted approach to the background for this painting. So you can see that I haven't copied the shape of the hedge in the background. I just put in that block of light yellow, as mentioned earlier. And now I'm just putting in a patch of pale blue. So this is cerulean blue mixed with the titanium white. And really I'm just kind of playing at this stage, experimenting with different shapes of background color. You can see that the bits of yellow I put down on the foreground are a little patchier than they are directly behind the animals. So that's partly to begin to define the kind of horizontal plane, the field that the animals are standing on. But as mentioned right at the beginning, I needed to obliterate the head of that third cow that I'd started to draw. It's not completely gone, but it will be by the end of the painting. That's my hope anyway. Now my plan is to stay with this relatively large brush relative to the size of the animals I'm painting for as long as possible. So I'm just adding some blue to the shadow areas on this white cow. So it's the same combo as before, but there's more of the cerulean blue in there this time. So in many ways I'm taking the same approach that I took for painting the people in last week's video. I started off there by just picking out the very dark areas, but now I'm doing something a little bit different and deliberately putting down areas of dry brush, or I just did, on the front leg and the chest, and then putting the paint down a little bit thicker for the darker shadows towards the rear of the animal, and then again reverting to the dry brush technique, just feathering the tips of the bristles across the paper for a few textural marks on the body. But working with the larger brush makes you think quite carefully about how to angle the brush, and do I need to use the corner or the edge or the flat of the brush to get the shape, the particular type of mark making that I want.